box. You opened it. We came.
Hello, sweet and beautiful people. Welcome to yet another marvelous video. And today we have a special treat for all the Hellraiser fans. In today's video, we're again exploring this cult classic, not by deep diving into its storyline or plot, but by presenting you with the 25 most insane facts about the movie's biggest driving force and iconic antagonist, Pinhead. As a fan, there's a fair chance that you might know some of these facts, but we can assure you that some facts will surely blow your mind. So hop in and stay till the end to know your favorite villain a little better than before. But before we get into our fact fest, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Change in name brought change in fortune. Did you know that the adorable Star Wars character Baby Yoda is actually named the Child in the official script and promotional material? It was actually the fans who gave this character the famous nickname Baby Yoda, as his features strongly resembled the senior Yoda. As a result, Baby Yoda gained faster popularity than other characters of the Star Wars universe, thus becoming an iconic asset for the franchise. But why are we suddenly talking about him right out of the blue? Because a similar thing happened with Pinhead too. In the original draft, Clive Barker, the author and director of Hellraiser, referred to Pinhead as the High Priest in his novels and lead Cenite in the first installment of the movie. The makeup crew members and the production team gave this legendary villain the nickname Pinhead, as his bald head was embedded with multiple sharp nails. Later, the fans picked the nickname as they felt connected with it more than the original name. As a result, the character garnered more success, and the movie, which was made on a tight budget, grossed huge bucks at the box office.
I am forever.
The inspiration behind creating the perfect terror machine. Prior to Pinhead, Freddy Krueger and Jason Voorhees were the two monsters who single-handedly dominated the horror scene of 80s Hollywood. Wes Craven, the creator behind Freddy Krueger, used his personal childhood trauma and news of several serial killings in building the fictional, horrifying persona of Freddy. Victor Miller, the creator of Jason Voorhees, used the impacts of child trauma and rejection to create his emotionless predator. Both the monsters took the slasher genre to new heights and gave it global recognition. But Barker thought those monsters to be boring and dull, as they lacked intellect and reasoning. Right from the start, Barker wanted to create his monster who was clear and articulately aware of his actions, and always one step ahead of his enemies, just like Christopher Lee's Count Dracula. Barker wanted his monster to be scary, but intelligently scary. Therefore, to design the aura of the Cenobites, he took inspiration from punk fashion, Catholicism, and sadomasochism. He used to visit S&M clubs in New York and Amsterdam. Now you know why the Cenobites have a pseudo-sexual aesthetic. But Barker wanted Pinhead to look even creepier. So to design Pinhead's head, he took inspiration from African fetish sculptures. Why? Because these African fetish sculptures had heads with pins and nails hammered in them as a common practice. This nerve-wracking and disturbing look gave Pinhead a distinct shamanic demeanor and established his religious side.
We have such sights to show you.
Bradley's preparation for the role. Doug Bradley has been the backbone of the Hellraiser franchise, as he acted as Pinhead for the first 8 installments. But before everything began, Bradley's mind was full of questions and self-doubt. Originally, Doug Bradley rejected the Pinhead role and opted to act as one of the furniture movers of the film, as he feared that the audience would not recognize him under the heavy makeup. Later, however, he changed his heart when he got the opportunity to go through the script. In an interview, Bradley stated that after he finished reading the script, he imagined Pinhead a combination of the famous Irish poet Oscar Wilde and the great English composer Noel Howard. He also shared that upon a discussion with Barker, Barker told him to think of the lead Cenobite as a cross between an administrator and a surgeon who functions in a hospital where there are only operating theaters. After Barker's advice, Bradley decided to mold the Pinhead character into a being that not only had to wield the knife, but also had to keep the timetable of his organization running. Bradley used to patiently currently sit for 6 hours to complete the makeup of the Cenobite, and once it was done, he went to the room and stood in front of the mirror to get into the character. As he was more exposed to theatrics, he restricted his wayward hand control and movements during the rehearsals to give the character complete control and confidence. Later, Bradley has also been credited as a makeup artist for the role. Pinhead after Bradley. In Hollywood, it's quite the norm that the same character gets played by different actors over the course of time, and Pinhead is no exception. Doug Bradley, who initially solidified the character's popularity in the Hall of Horror through the first 8 installments, finally turned down the offer to play the iconic role in the next movie of the franchise, Hellraiser Revelations, due to a minor clash with his shooting schedule. However, the actor still remained friends with Clive Barker and even did a cameo role in Barker's Book of Blood, which is streaming on Hulu. After Bradley, the mantle to carry forward the legacy of Pinhead went to Stephen Smith Collins and Fred Tatasciore in 2011's Hellraiser Revelations. Collins played the physical part of the character, while Tatasciore became the voice. However, fans and critics brutally rejected this new Pinhead for its half-baked makeup job and awkward performances. After this disaster, Tatasciore still managed to find work as a voice artist for Hulk, Looney Tunes, Animaniacs, and DC. After the bashing of Hellraiser Revelations, the role of Pinhead went to Paul T. Taylor in 2018's Hellraiser Judgment. The only good thing that happened this time was that Taylor was a super fan of this character and mentioned it as his dream role in his interview with 1428 Elm. To get to the skin of the character, Taylor used to smoke cigarettes to make his voice more baritone and walked alone in sketchy parts of the city at night to experience fear. Taylor even went a step ahead and took cues from the Hellraiser comic books to give the new Pinhead a strong impact with a different perspective. As a result of his efforts, Hellraiser Judgment received positive reviews for its efforts and creativity, even with a messy plot. Next, the franchise went for a reboot in 2022, and the role went to trans actress Jamie Clayton, which marked a bold step in shifting the interpretation of the universe with more focus showcasing BDSM culture, embodying themes of pain, pleasure, and transgression. In the novel, Pinhead is described as an androgynous being with a feminine voice, so casting a trans actor for this iconic role for the first time brought the character closer to the source material. Clayton's portrayal as the new Pinhead was phenomenal, as she intricately captured the cold look and feel of the character with a blend of her own uniqueness.
Forgive me. My name was Spencer. Elliot Spencer.
Killed the human to be reborn as a demon. Gollum, a popular character from The Lord of the Rings, slowly transformed from a human to a sinister monster after unveiling the ring's power. A similar incident happens with Pinhead too, where he rejected humanity after he found a mysterious artifact to embrace the driving force of evil. Before being the menacing demon, Pinhead was once a human named Captain Elliot Spencer, who was born in 1887 in the British Victorian era. He later joined the British Army in 1921, and soon became a captain because of his strong oratory skills. Spencer was a charismatic young lad who held compassion for everyone around him. However, during one of the battles in Flanders, he lost his trust and faith in humanity after he witnessed the massacre of his comrades, one after the other, by the enemy. This event left him traumatized, and he got totally submerged in guilt and anxiety. Spencer cursed the gods and labeled them failures for their inability to save mankind. To escape from this pain, Spencer became a nihilist and wandered the earth to lead a hedonistic life. Spencer started committing acts that were considered taboo in modern society. Later, Spencer traveled to British India and discovered the Lament Configuration. The Lament Configuration is a notorious puzzle box which has the power to open the gates of hell and allow the Cenobites to attack and devour the flesh of the unlucky ones who try to open it. After Spencer opened the Lament Configuration in the tent, he immediately got chained by the hooks and was dragged into the labyrinth and later was transformed into Cenobite Pinhead, who obediently followed Leviathan, the dark entity, for decades, losing all his human memories forever.
I am pain.
pleasure of pain. Barker disrupted the slasher movie genre when he created a character with nails embedded on its head instead of claws, fangs, and weapons. But you will be amazed to know that Barker also had a bolder plan up his sleeve. Apart from nails on the head, Barker also conceptualized the character to have navel piercings with chains that would go downwards to Pinhead's lower regions, which would have indirectly hinted to the audience that the character also had genital piercings. But it was not just for shock value. It had a deeper meaning. Through this, Barker wanted to symbolize the character's strong commitment to its sadomasochistic nature. He also wanted to show that Cenobites have also rejected their human boundaries, such as gender, pain, and morality. However, due to strong censorship and budget constraints, Barker was only limited to showing the nails embedded on the head rather than the full thing. As a result, the fans who had never read the literature were never fully exposed to Pinhead's sexual orientation, up until the recent controversy when trans actress Jamie Clayton was roped in to play this iconic role in the Hellraiser reboot. Most of the fans considered Pinhead male, so they got concerned and questioned the makers about their choices. Then, the real OG Bradley stepped up in support of Jamie, shed light on the original piece material, and informed everyone that Pinhead from the original novel was always about supporting a million shades of femininity.
Welcome to hell.
From a pawn to a leader. In 1987, when Hellraiser first hit the big screen, Pinhead became the new terror sensation after Jason, Michael, and Freddy, but with a different approach. Unlike them, Pinhead was intelligent, well-spoken, and was conscious about his actions. He offered torture and punishment to those who ridiculed him, but you'll be shocked to know that this evergreen villain didn't start as the leader of the Cenobites. In the original novella, The Hellbound Heart, Pinhead started as a pawn and obeyed a powerful master known as the lead Cenobite. This lead Cenobite had chains hooked all over his face, stretching out on all parts of his head. He was even chained from eyes to mouth, which caused his eyes to move whenever he spoke. Pinhead was just a small piece of a jigsaw in the novella, but became the center of attention in the movies.
Pain. How dare you use that word?
Bradley's masterclass. The Joker from The Dark Knight is one of the greatest villains that Hollywood has ever produced. The maniacal laugh, the unpredictability, and the ability to create chaos and anarchy were all the highlights of Joker's madness on the big screen. But to pull off this character, Heath Ledger sought the help of isolation. For 6 weeks, he remained out of touch with the crew and prepared his role alone without any disturbance. Long before Ledger, a similar approach was also taken by Bradley, who stayed away from his cast and crew members to give his legendary role Pinhead a secretive demeanor. Bradley was so hidden from everyone that none of his fellow cast members could recognize him on the set. He even got ignored in the wrap-up party as his co-stars didn't know who he was. Even the makers played his game and never mentioned the name Doug Bradley while discussing Pinhead in interviews and other press releases. They maintained this secrecy until the movie was released. Bradley's plan worked, and the character got etched in history forever. The crossover of Hellverse. Today, we see multiple universes and crossovers, such as the MCU, DCU, Monsterverse, and whatnot. But would you believe that we had the chance to witness an exciting crossover between all the legendary monsters of the 80s era? Yes, when Freddy vs. Jason was released in 2003, it was rumored that the early drafts of the movie also included the participation of Pinhead and Michael Myers as well. Even though the main plot of the movie was said to revolve around the fight scene between Freddy, Jason, and Pinhead in Hell, the crossover was also planned to showcase the origins of Pinhead and the complex functioning of the Hell dimensions. But unfortunately, because of rights issues, the film only ended up with Freddy facing Jason. The makeup challenges. Even today, with all the latest VFX and cutting-edge technology, Hollywood sometimes fails to deliver the best possible outcome for some characters. So one can easily understand the scene in the 80s. However, with limited resources, the makeup artists of Hellraiser could still pull out a character such as Pinhead with a convincing look, but it didn't come without any challenges. The Cenobites from the novel were described with a head decorated by a gridwork pattern and jewelry pins. So, to replicate the same features, Barker first sketched the movie version of the character, but the finished product was quite different from Barker's sketch and had quills coming out from the top of its head, much like the Shuna Sassy character from Nightbreed. However, they had budget constraints, so they inserted 6-inch nails into the head instead of quills. To cautiously insert the nails with perfect symmetry and equal spacing, the makeup artists used a drawing of a grid in a life cast. Barker liked the arrangement because it matched the vision for his character and didn't break the illusion of Pinhead being a religious head of a mysterious cult. Bradley had to sit for 4 to 6 hours daily for the makeup, and it also took some time for the removal. Later, they shifted from nails to pins, as the nails felt crude and didn't feel right. On the other hand, the pins kept the actor's flesh safe and secure, and also gave the character a refined touch. In the mid to late 2000s, Gary Tunnicliffe, the man behind the makeup of Pinhead for the past 4 films, redesigned an alternate look for the villain by replacing the iconic thin pins with square shafted nails to give it a rusty and handmade look. But Barker criticized the redesign as it gave the character a bloody look. From the shadows to fame. The first installment of the Hellraiser series was made under $1 million and became one of the highest-grossing horror movies ever. But you'd be surprised to know that the director and writer of this film, Clive Barker, had no directing experience prior to this movie. Barker was a writer, and he used to write screenplays and books. But he wanted to be a director because his earlier written material, Underworld from 1985 and Rawhead Rex from 1986, were mishandled by the directors with their creative visions. So he wrote the screenplay of Hellraiser, which was based on his novel The Hellbound Heart, to set out on his ambition for directing. But there was a problem. According to a Fangoria article, Barker first pitched the movie script to Roger Corman's New World Pictures, and after a lot of drafts and log lines, the final script was locked. Then, to test his directorial skills, Barker first thought of making a showreel for a few friends and family members. In another one of the interviews, Barker also mentioned that he went to the local library to find a book on directing, but the books had already been checked out, so he was forced to rediscover another path to create his dream. But eventually, Barker started directing the movie. Initially, the makers didn't have much faith in the product, but once they were midway through the film, they realized that they could do something special with Barker. So they started pouring money to give life to every important scene, and then the rest became history. Today, Barker is a celebrated personality in Hollywood circles, and it became possible with one vision and a first step. Challenges in Cenobite costumes. We already know what inspired Barker to create the Cenobites' look. However, the main challenge came in designing their costumes. Costume designer Jane Wildgoose received vague phrases like repulsive glamour and magnificent super butchers as briefs regarding the costume design for the Cenobites. After the costumes were locked, it was time for the implementation, but it proved even tougher than the designing. All the actors had to remain without any movements during the long hours of makeup and costume trials. Some even couldn't hear or speak properly with their outfits on. Sam Bamford, who played the massive Butterball Cenobite, was a man of short stature, so it almost took 2 to 3 makeup assistants to make adjustments to help him transform into an enormous form. Nicholas Vince, the one who played the Chattering Cenobite, couldn't see very well because of the costume, and as a result, he unintentionally hurt his co-star Ashley Lawrence in one of the scenes. Apart from that, the prep time was long. The actors had to be on the shoot at 4:30 in the morning, and the costume designers and makeup artists who were in charge of the preparation had to arrive even earlier than the actors. But nevertheless, the costumes and the actors' performances ticked all the boxes, and all the hardship worked in their favor. The original title of the movie. You won't believe that one of the most reputed names in the horror genre was named something else in the original drafts. When the film moved to the floors, it was initially named as Sadomasochists from Beyond the Grave, but Barker wanted to name it Hellbound, as the movie was getting adapted from his work, The Hellbound Heart. However, the independent producer of the movie, Christopher Figg, suggested the name Hellraiser instead, as it perfectly suited the dark vibe and theme of the movie. cutting the dialogues. Many Cenobites, such as the Butterball and the Chatterer, had dialogues in the original draft to contribute more to the eerie demeanor of the movie. However, the heavy makeup and costumes made the dialogue delivery of the actors who played these roles difficult. So it was decided to omit the dialogue of these characters and only keep their silent, looming presence to maintain the creepy vibe of the movie. Later, their dialogues were forwarded to Pinhead and the female Cenobite. Even though it was an adjustment made out of an inconvenience, it worked in their favor as more dialogue for Pinhead than others helped the character to shine as the supreme authority of the realm and benefited the movie in a positive way.
And I'll enjoy making you enjoy it.
Barker hated the nickname Pinhead. Barker refused to show any support for the nickname of his character High Priest as Pinhead because it disrupted the character's dignity. So, without being too vocal about it, Barker quickly showcased his displeasure in his 2015 novel, The Scarlet Gospels, where he had shown the High Priest getting angry over anyone who dared to call him Pinhead. Through this, Barker mostly wanted to restore the entity's dark, dignified, and terrorizing roots again. But things didn't stop here. In Hellraiser 3, Joey Summerskill also used the term Pinhead as a direct insult to the High Priest. Barker later stated that Pinhead actually has a Cenobite name, but it will be revealed later in his future works. Legacy in comics. Just like in literature and movies, Hellraiser also left its footprints in the comic world too. In 1990, Marvel Comics trade unit Epic Comics published the comic version of Hellraiser, which followed the canon events of the universe rather than the novel's original plot. In the comics, the lead Cenobite has been referred to as Pinhead and is depicted as the last avatar of the Cenobite spirit Zipetotec, a powerful entity of Aztec mythology. Not only that, in one of the storylines named The Harrowing, Pinhead is shown to have an intimate knowledge with another Cenobite known as Merkova, who later gets killed by the disciples of Mortemame, sister and rival of the dark master of hell, Leviathan. Pinhead also features in a crossover with martial law, where his human counterpart, Captain Spencer, took part in some battles of the Somme. Meaning of the term Cenobite. Barker described Cenobites as fictional, extra-dimensional demonic beings in his novel. But if you consider the etymology, the term Cenobite means a member of a religious group who lives in a sacred, disciplined community. Cenobite in Hellraiser actually represented the obedient servants of Leviathan, whom we mentioned just a moment ago. Connection with Sherlock Holmes. The fictional detective icon and legend Sherlock Holmes crossed over with Hellraiser in the 2016 novel Sherlock Holmes and the Servants of Hell. The major plotline of the novel revolved around Sherlock, who was seen investigating a case of serial missing persons centered around a man who vanished from inside a locker. But don't get the wrong idea. Sherlock locked horns with the Cenobites, but Pinhead was not one of them. In fact, his human father, Howard Spencer, was one of the people who were missing from the case. If we speculate on the theories, then the missing case of his father might have prompted Elliot to discover and solve the lament configuration many years later, hoping to unite with him by opening the gates of hell. Barker's demand for real actors. The makers of horror movies often get tempted to focus more on the blood and violence rather than capturing the emotions of the characters. But Barker was a different breed. From the start, he wanted to make a unique horror movie that would define the slasher genre for ages. He didn't want to make the next Freddy Krueger or Jason Voorhees. He was determined to create something original. So instead of relying more on a blood and gore formula like others, Barker scouted brilliant actors who would authentically act to add nuances and layers to his characters. Barker's gamble of putting his chips on raw acting talents proved to be a big game changer, as the audience was delighted to witness an outlandish horror movie with an immersive and unbelievable experience for the first time. Cockroach and maggot trouble. It may sound bizarre, but believe us, it is true that the makers of Hellraiser specifically hired someone to keep the cockroaches and maggots in check. The real story behind this crazy adjustment is that the shooting of the movie was going on in the UK, where the country had a strict law to keep both sexes of cockroaches away from the movie sets to stop the cause of infestations. The situation was so funny that Barker once stated in an interview that they had captured a lot of male cockroaches and maggots and kept them in a fridge where the insects froze. Dubbing the dialogues. Initially, the production house wanted the creative team to change the setup of the movie from British to American, to appeal to the American audience and enjoy better cash grabs. But Barker and his team were reluctant to change the UK setup, as it was similar to the novel, and so they gave no attention to the production house's advice. As a result, both parties had to come to a common conclusion, and Barker had to compromise and let all the actors' dialogues be dubbed by American actors, except Doug Bradley. The producers and creators thought of overdubbing Bradley's dialogues just like the others, but after seeing his efforts and commitment, the creative team and production house settled on using his voice for the character instead. Barker for the rescue. Even though this movie has garnered a lot of revenue, praise, and admiration from the fans, if we spin the wheel of time many years back, then we would have understood the pain of creating magic with limited resources and budget. Midway through the film, the makers realized that they did not have an adequate budget to carry out high-cost animations. So Barker took charge and animated those sequences himself, which involved the magical lament configuration scene too. The poster became a blessing. The actual poster of Hellraiser depicted the front and central profile of Pinhead. But instead of Pinhead, Barker initially wanted the skinned version of Frank or the lament configuration box on the poster so that he could conceal the identity of the lead Cenobite only for the movies. But later, he felt better using Pinhead as it was the main unique selling point of the movie and allowed it to stand out from the other generic horror movies. Pinhead's real first appearance. Many fans think Pinhead made his first appearance in the Hellbound Heart novel, but it's not entirely true. Pinhead was present in Barker's earlier plays, known as Hunters in the Snow. But here's a twist. Instead of the actual Pinhead, the play had an undead Dutchman who tortured his victim. The Dutchman later became the blueprint of what we know and love today as Pinhead. Let me give you another mother of coincidence. The same Dutchman role was also played by Doug Bradley way back in 1973. Pinhead was not a villain. Well, this might come to you as a bummer, but Pinhead was not an out-and-out villain or a messiah of darkness. He was a character who had many complex layers and was locked between light and dark. For instance, Pinhead never tortured anyone who didn't seek out dark pleasures. He could distinguish people based on honesty, intention, and sin, and would provide them with hell's punishment and torments accordingly. Pinhead truly became evil when Elliot Spencer's personality was completely wiped out of his consciousness. Marvelous verdict. Guys, we've reached the end of our video, but before we leave you, we'd like to give you a bonus update regarding your favorite franchise. Recently, Keith Levine, the producer of Hellraiser Reboot, shared that the new Hellraiser 2 is in the works. He also added that even David Bruckner, director of Hellraiser Reboot, is also actively participating in the pre-production setup of the movie. So if we consider the statement as true, are you excited to watch the movie? And do you still want Jamie Clayton to reprise her role as Pinhead? Or would you like the makers to cast someone new? Please leave your thoughts in the comments below. And that's a wrap from our side. Sincere apologies if we missed any important fact related to the character. Till then, goodbye. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.